Where is the...
Kao što to obično biva u žaru borbe, obično zaboravimo neke stvari napraviti. Jedna od stvari je kolega Svebor iz HR Opena je rekao da ima još neke poklončiće za vas, pa evo će doći iza mene i dat vam to odmah. A u međuvremenu, evo, prije nego Tomaž počne, potkrala se jedna greška u žaru borbe predstavljanja svih ovih konferencija i sponzora. Zaboravili smo reći zapravo tko su organizira opće Javacro konferenciju. To je prije svega Hrvatska udruga Oracle korisnika sa nama Hujakom, s kojima evo već uspješno surađujemo 3. godinu i zapravo da budem iskren surađujemo na drugim stvarima kao što su primjerice, kao što su primjerice i Java dani na Hrov konferenciji u Ravinju na kojima vjerujem da su neki od vas bili i tako dalje. Tako da evo, Hrog i Hujak zajedno na Javacro. A Svebor, što ti imaš ovdje?
Ja imam nagradnu igru koju sam zaboravio napraviti, a ta nagradna igra ide ovako. Dakle, prvih dvoje koji kažu da žele stik, dobit će stik.
Dok se dijele nagrade, evo ja najavljujem kolegu iz bratske nam udruge iz Slovenije. Udruga je Open Blade. Dakle, Tomaž Cerar pričat će nam o Bleeding Edge, to sam već rekao. Znači, prije 10 dana je releasan WildFly ili JBoss Application Server verzije 8. Pa pozdravite Tomaž.
Ajde, čekajte, pa sve ćemo vam reći.
I'll speak in English because my Croatian is so bad that you would laugh at me and I don't want to embarrass myself too much today. So I'll just try to keep it native to the technology and everything we do. So we'll take a look what is WildFly 8. For those that don't know, WildFly 8 was renamed from JBoss Application Server, and this is the first version that was released after the rename. So that was JBoss 7.1, and now it's version 8, which is under the name of the WildFly. If you know about JBoss, we got some awards. We are really good. JBoss 7 won the Best Application Server Award in the tooling, metrics, performance, and so on. So we're really good, believe us. We got the best productivity marks and everywhere. But we're not here to talk about that. Different story. WildFly, what it is and what it does. We got new features and we keep all the good and really nice one from the 7X series. Any one of you used JBoss S7? Just hands up? 2, 3, great. Oh, 4. You don't count, Marko. He's abandoning us, that's why. In any case. What is WildFly? Previously, JBoss Application Server, it's an upstream project for the enterprise application platform for those that want the commercial support to run it in production, run in long term. It's a release that has a long support cycle of 10 years, so if you want to stay off something really stable, you go commercial. If you want to work with the latest bleeding edge stuff, new stuff, cool stuff, you go with WildFly. The difference is only that you need subscription for that, but WildFly is completely free as a beer, so just go there and use it. It's really fast, it's really lightweight, and it's really manageable. For those who don't know AS7, it's an application server that was rewritten from scratch. We dropped the whole code base from JBoss 6, which was the last from the previous code base, and redesigned everything. So it usual boot time on semi-modern machine like this laptop is 2 years old, it's around 2 seconds, so the whole server is up and running. And because of that, it's really developer friendly. You can deploy application, test it, and run it really, really fast. The whole develop the code, test, develop cycle is really, really faster because of that. And of course, we support Java EE. In version 8 is Java EE 7, which is really cool. So, E7 We'll take a look what it is if no one knows, some new cool features. But most importantly, which I'm most proud of, is actually we replaced the web server that we had. The old web server was JBoss Web, which is based on Tomcat, that anyone knows. And because of the many problems we had with it and some new requirements for the cloud deployments, we rewrote the whole web server from scratch. And WildFly is the first one to actually got it. And as a result of that, we managed to reduce the ports. So the server now only listens in 2 ports, not like 8 ports as before. We'll take a look at this later. We added role-based administration control auditing. It's a thing that, as my colleague said, it's too enterprising. But if you want to know if you have a management access and admin console and everything, and you want some people to have access just to configure data sources, just to do deployments, you can do that now. We added support for automated patching, which is mostly useful for the commercial offering, where you can just add new patches for releases and so on. So you don't need to download another 150 megabytes for the whole application server and reconfigure everything. You just download like 5 megabyte patch or whatever it is. And one new thing we added because of really big demand on the market for small, manageable, embeddable runtimes is a minimalistic core distribution, which is just a core server with no support for EE or anything, just enables you to have all the management, all the deployment functionalities, the domain mode, and so I'll talk a bit later. And then the main thing which WildFly brings is Java EE. These are all the standard specifications that Java EE brings. The ones in bluish, because this projector is not really color friendly, are the new stuff. It's the totally new stuff that coming to Java EE 7. All the other stuff is mostly updated versions, like JMS was updated from 1.1, JPA for 2.0 and so on. But the JSON, WebSockets, and concurrency stuff and batch is completely new. So we'll take a look at a few samples. WebSockets, anyone uses them, finds a good use for them? Okay, it's a really nice way to have a socket open to the browser, to the client, to push data through. It's a lightweight socket, not like the TCP socket, but WebSocket. And Java EE adds like standard support for it, so you don't have to use some special proprietary APIs from different app servers to support it. This is some simple example, and basically what you do is just create a server endpoint. You tell them where to bind it, with what URL. Then you have some message marker where this method can be called whatever, just it has to have the on-message annotation and these 2 parameters. And in the first parameter will get the decoded message that was sent from the client, and the session is what the client stuff is there. And this code, for example, what it does, just get the message. It's a chat example. When it gets a message from the client, it just sends them to all the clients that we have. There are some other life cycle events like on connect, on close, so you know when the clients connect, so you can keep a track of it. But just a simple example what the stuff does and what's possible to do. Batch is also new. It addresses a need because many of enterprise applications need to do some batch processing. You have an application for some banking, you need to do processing of the payments that got done that day. And the best way to do it now was basically write your own thing or use some Spring Batch was there and a few others, and now you have a standard way of doing it, which works across all application servers that implement Java EE 7. And basically this is the job definition with steps defined, chunks, many chunks, and then you have 3 things that are important. Reader, which writes the configuration, processor, which is what processes it. And that reference there is basically just CDI bin reference. You reference it with name, and this is the name that you reference there. And the writer to write stuff back. If anyone has any questions on any slide, just stop me. Otherwise, I'll just go through and we can talk afterwards. Another thing that is now really useful, you have proper standard support for working with JSON. And you have this JSON object, which is API that is introduced in Java E7 that allows you to manipulate JSON. It's basically that's it, nothing really special. I think this example is self-explanatory. More interesting stuff that was added is Java E concurrency. Till now in Java E, you could not do like new thread and do something in there. It was forbidden. You could do it, but you never knew what application server implementation would do because usually the threads are all managed in some thread pool and so on. And now you actually get the proper support for that. You just do something that implements runnable or callable and do your stuff there, and you can inject an executor service, which you can configure in the application server, and then just say executor, submit my task, and it will do it for you. This is a really simple example, but just a way how you can actually use managed thread pools to execute some of your stuff that you need to do asynchronously. Another new thing that Java E7 brought is Jax RS client support, which this is the biggest change in Jax RS 2. Now you can actually build, till now you just had you publish the RESTful web service on a server, and then how you consumed it, you're on your own how to do it. Now with this you got a client support, you can do a client builder, a web target, which is the address of the service, and you can just register how to transform which objects you get back. And here you basically just get syntax how to work. This pet is what is the parameter under the original target, and template is like you can replace ID or whatever you want and tell them what kind of request it is and get. Or you can just build the request till here, and then you call get many more times. Depends what you want, how you want to do it, and so on. Another new thing in JMS 2.0 is how much easier it is to work with JMS. API has improved massively because in the last 3 or 4 releases of Java E, there was no changes at all. The last one, I think it was in E5, it got a notation on message, but that was it. Now you actually get a really nice builder API. You can inject like JMS context. The default one is now bound to the CDI lifecycle. You can just say inject, or you could look it up like this. You can also define via annotation new queues and things like that. The first notation defines it, the second one injects it, and you can work with it. Or you can still define it on application server level and configure it and inject it here. And this is now the simplest way to actually send something into queue. Before it was like this much of code, and try catch, and try this, and producer send, and so on. This is so much easier. We have support the in major IDEs, which is kind of important given that WildFly 8 was released last Wednesday, so we're quite happy with the support in different tooling. The NetBeans got it, the JBoss Tools is our offering, and IntelliJ has it as well, so pretty nice. Okay, let's talk about Undertow, which is a topic I really like. I worked a lot on it, so it's really flexible, it's really high performance. We have numbers to prove it. It's not just in theory. There is some Tech Empower benchmarks that are published every few months. They do a new run, and we are constantly on the top of the performance chart. So it supports both blocking and non-blocking APIs. Why this is important? Because like servlet APIs that is built on top of it is completely blocking. But if you want to do really high performance stuff today, you really need to go non-blocking way, like Nginx, for instance. We have a composition handler-based architecture, which allows us to really plug in new handlers, new stuff. You can do it yourself, and the handler is just implementing one method in one interface, and that's about it. It is really lightweight. It's 600 kilobytes that you can put on ClassPath and work with it. I'll show an example. It supports Servlet 3.1, which is the latest Servlet certification, and HTTP upgrade. This is an important part because of that, everyone knows what HTTP upgrade is. This is a mechanism. It's really old stuff in the HTTP specification, but no one actually used it. And the first real massive usage was for the WebSocket. What you do is like you create a request to like your port 80, and the server on the other side said, oh yeah, this request should be handled by a different protocol. And you say HTTP upgrade and protocol and name of the protocol. And that means the server will reuse the same connection that's there and upgrade to the different protocol. So what that results is that you can have just one entry point and upgrade all the protocols that support that to different ways. That's why we have just one port open, and now you can upgrade everything from that port. Don't need to know, oh, where is JMS listening? 445, 4455? No, it's 8080, that's it. Everything is there. Need to do remote AGB, 8080, and so on and so on. So we implemented all the management stuff, all the protocols based with HTTP upgrade. Important stuff is for many people is that mode cluster is still supported, just different backend, but we still work with it. This is an example, complete example of the working server built from scratch. You can take this code, add undertow jar and xnio jar on classpath, and you got a server that will say hello world. You say bind to the local host 8080, send the default handler for it, and this one inline implements the handler, and just do exchange, put a content type header, and response send hello world. It's hello world, but it's a full-blown web server that you can build embeddable, for instance, in your application that you need it. That's it. You can add servlets here and so on. It's a bit different builder up, but everything is done builder, like add handler, add listeners, SSL, and so on and so on. It's really, really lightweight. So. I talked about port reduction a bit earlier, and now what we have is we just used 2 ports. We could still have just one, but we choose to split the management, all the management operations for accessing, for let's say an admin console, CLI. So we separated that because it's easier to secure it that way. You can just say, okay, my management will bind on that interface, but the public stuff on different interface. Technology-wise, it's not a problem to just put everything on 8080. We don't mind, but then there is security risk that people just leave everything open in production, and we don't want that. We got burned before, so to say. And with HTTP upgrade, many people say, yeah, but you're doing this for HTTP and upgrading. Isn't this slower? Just the initial request is, because when a request comes in, you upgrade it, and then you delegate that request to different handler, different code handles, all that, and you don't care about it. It's native protocol since then on. It's just one initial request response overhead. Okay, role-based access control. We have support for that. You can go to management, the CLI, and different roles, what you can do, what you cannot do, and so on. You have different set of permissions. I'll just go through this because most people don't really care about that. We have audit logging, for example, so that you know what users are doing on the server, you know that they're deploying something, they're changing some configuration parameters and so on. And we log all that stuff. We can send it to local file or syslog or whatever the system administrator choose to configure. This is mostly useful for system administrator, not for the developer at all. Automated patching, we can update libraries, configuration files, and things like that. Just a zip bundle, you say patch apply and name of the zip, and it does it. You can apply it, invalidate, roll back the patches, maybe something didn't work really well, and so on. This is something this is the first release, we have support for that. And possibly in new patches that we'll do, we'll also produce next to the full release, also just a patch to update the stuff. But we're still kind of feeling the ground, how well will that work. The new thing also is a minimalistic core distribution. Currently it's 15 megabytes, which is empty server with all the management, with the controller with the class loading, everything but any subsystems. We have subsystems that do like support for Java Mail or AGB and so on. All that is thrown out, and we have just the core server with all the management that you can eat. So you can, for instance, build a really simple web server that only needs web server and, let's say, JAX RS and nothing else. You don't want to have the whole server. You want to have a minimal distribution that you can use. Now, going forward for WildFly 9, we have in plan that we're splitting up the code base to support this a bit much better, and we'll be also doing like because of the undertow. We had support for like reverse proxying in Undertow, and plan for the future is that you'll have like minimal web server, which will be a core distro with just Undertow and nothing else. You'll be able to manage the whole server from one point, even from reverse proxy, no Apache in front, no Nginx in front, and all the backend all together. And this is why we are doing this small releases and so on. So. But still, there will be a zip with everything. So if you want to use that, no problem. If you want to play with Java 8, we have the full test suite passing on it, which is a big achievement. We kind of like it. There's the REST EZ3, which is the stuff for the JAX RS. Hibernate Search is now bundled. If anyone knows what Hibernate Search is, it's a really nice tool that enables you to have Lucene index, the full text search over your entities, JPA entities. We bundle this because of some other things, and different application servers or runtimes like Cape that implement Google App Engine on top of WildFly uses Hibernate Search for their own stuff that they need. We added also support for security permissions that are per deployment, so you can just say, okay, I want these permissions in my deployment or not this. If you want to do clustering, we have much better improved clustering API to do your own custom, let's say, high availability services. And so on. One important part also what we did is we removed some stuff from the server, namely CMP, Container Managed Persistence, which was something that was part of AGB 2.0, something like that. Yeah, it's really old stuff. It's really hard to work. It basically allows you to persist state of your beans to the database. But by writing a lot of SQL mappings and things like that, since we have JPA, which does all that and more, it's really not needed anymore, and E7 specification defines the CMP now as optional. And given how much problems we had with it and lots of maintenance work, we just decided to remove it because there is so little usage of it. If you still need it, you can go for our commercial offering. We support it there, but not for the bleeding edge stuff. It just slows us down. The same stuff goes for JAX RPC. Since now you have JAX VS, JAX RS, and so on. The JAX RPC was an old version of specification that allows you to do remote procedure calls, which is something that really didn't work properly most of the time. And the JCP for E7 decided to do it optional, so we dropped it as well. The last thing is probably something that no one knows about, is just 88 that is support for deployment-based, some standard definition how deployment should be done and how you can look up some deployment stuff. No one actually knows about it. We dropped that because it was really badly implemented. We supported just the bare minimum to pass the TCK at the time, and that's about it. WildFly is really cloud-friendly. Given how little ports now we have, you can just have 100 instances or more on one single server because you don't hit the limit of the TCP stack. And OpenShift already offers it, as does Cloudbase. And I have about 5 minutes. Okay, I'll just rush through a few things. Stuff that is still here but is carried from previous versions of ASM, just go quickly through it. We have standalone mode, which is usually the server that you start and work with it, and the other is the managed domain, which allows you to have a single management point to manage many clusters of servers, all through the CLI, admin console, or configuration files. Managed domain, you have like host controllers, you have domain controller, which is the main server that controls all the other servers, and you have host controllers. Just think of them like a server that has a host controller instance configured there that is managed by the domain mode. This is like a graph to see. And every host can have different servers installed in different servers groups and so on and so on. And you can then just go to the domain controller admin console and say, deploy this application to server group A, and it will deploy them to those 3 servers and different host controllers. You have command line interface that works either in standalone mode or domain controller mode. It's Linux style shell. It has like tab completion and things like that. Or you can have in non-interactive mode like batch files. You can just say, okay, execute this with all the configuration applied. And different kind of types of operation. And we save all the stuff back, no matter where you configure it, either via CLI, admin console, or even HTTP, REST API that we have. Everything is persisted back, so it's not just runtime only configuration. Then we have an admin console, which is really small thing, lightweight. It's done in WIT, and it's just a JavaScript that runs with no server-side support. Everything is done via our REST API. It's a small thing. It's not like a full-blown management stuff. It works quite well. So this is basically what we have and what WildFly is. And basically I'm done. Just some references. Any questions?
Nekako dobra stvar je da zbilja doći ćete do situacije da imate hrpetinu onih handlera. Imat ćete hrpu anonimnih unutarnjih klasa i to.
We have like 3 minutes, so.
So for JSON library,
yes.
Can I just somehow take the artifact dependency and use it in my own project? It's not J2E,
yes,
JE project. So is this one artifact with API and then another artifact with implementation?
In this case, it's just API. It's nothing that. It's really simple.
Okay, great.
It's a really small library. You can use it wherever you want. It's not dependent to Java EE. It's just a library. There are many implementations of it, but they follow all the same API specification.
And about HTTP upgrade. So this is basically you create an HTTP connection,
yes.
right? Or basically you create a connection, then you do an HTTP request.
Yes.
It's a special request, and you get a HTTP response back, but from that point on you use the same socket for whatever you want.
It's the same connection that is then upgraded to the different protocol. And for instance, the request comes in through the web, and then web says, okay, this request it should be like a JMS request for the messaging. And when it's upgraded, say upgrades to the HTTP messaging, or messaging, or remoting, whatever the protocol you need. And the client comes back, says, I need to upgrade the protocol, I'll switch the protocol. There's like 101 response switching protocols. And from there, that same socket, the next request that the client does says, okay, this is now the protocol that we specified. And the next request is already a native protocol that service needs. And on the server side, that service that uses that response and works with you. From there on, it's exactly the same as it was.
And if I want to make part of my WAR some kind of a custom protocol, some custom configuration, something, can I do that? I mean, this would be in a non-standard way.
You can do that, yeah. I have a different set of slides about that. It's more Undertow specific, but yeah, it's quite easy to do that.
So I have to work with something that is Undertow specific, somehow hook into
There is no standard specification for doing that. But we have quite nice APIs that you can utilize to do exactly what that.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Can you tell me when will the enterprise application platform that corresponds to this edition will be available, and how will you handle transition? For instance, you have an enterprise client using WildFly, and then at one point of time he says, I want a paid subscription. How will migration look like?
There are different types of migration. One is configuration-wise. You want to keep your configuration. This is what we support. For instance, even if you would take configuration from 7.1, 7.1.2, 7.1.3, whatever, and use it in WildFly, it will still work. just the subsystems that were replaced, you should remove them and everything else will work. And we actually take really care about upgrading stuff. So, and when the question is that WildFly 8 was released last week. Now we plan to do WildFly 9 till end of this year. And from there point on, the productivization effort will start. That means that the code from the community will be taken and brought into Red Hat internal QE, extra testing, and so on. And from that point, there will be some alpha builds, beta builds, which will be available for community to test and do whatever you want. Even you can take the general ability binaries for testing and everything else, so you can actually use it before you put it to production. Even now, you can take EAP6.2, for instance, which is a commercial offering, and you can use it to develop and work whatever you want with it. And we really kind of try to preserve compatibility as far as possible when it comes from community to enterprise. There are some, we did some mistakes in past, I'll give you that, but we learned from our mistakes and we'll make sure that we don't do them again, if possible.
Okay, Tomaž, thank you very much. We've run out of time. Any further questions after? So, thank you again.
Okay, welcome.